Hey, hello there, and welcome to Talking with Tony. A little bit something of a new feature here for you today on Talking with Tony. A little bit of technical difficulties this time on my end. And when we went to the YouTube variety last year, our very first guest was Fred Blatchford. He did the show twice in that first season, and I don't believe we've had as many views as we had as the show with Fred Blatchford. The only other one that came close was Fellowship of Christian Athletes director Rob Brass, who was the first guest, Fred, of this season, and that was up around 98 and 99 views. So whenever you're in the company of someone with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, the director of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, that probably makes you feel pretty good.
Yes, absolutely. Glad to be back.
Good. Glad to have you back. Let's start with this. First of all, get your opinion. These drones that are appearing over New Jersey and some other places and all, what's going on here? Does the government know exactly what's going on and they're doing it and they don't want to say, doesn't seem to be from a foreign country, but I don't know because the government won't tell us what it is. What is your take on this?
Well, a couple of things. One, I hope you don't have any listeners in New Jersey. If there's going to be any drones flying over there that may be from another country, New Jersey's probably as good a place as any for them to fly over. It is shocking that the United States government doesn't know what's flying over with obviously dozens of these things in one of the most populated parts of our country, and they don't know what they are, where they come from, and where they go when they land. I find it hard to believe. Now, there may be a very, very logical reason as to why they aren't being transparent with the country for whatever reason, but it is a bit mind-boggling that they can't find out where they come off the ground from and where they go back from. But it is a unique story, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. But it is a little bit unsettling that the United States government, which you would think has as good a technology as anybody in the world, can't tell us where they came from and what they are doing while they fly over us. But I guess if you think about it, the same administration let a blimp fly across the United States for 3 weeks and they didn't do anything about it. These things actually move fairly quickly. So maybe they just move faster than a blimp and we can't figure out how to take them down.
Well, I agree with everything you said, except I don't really know who's running the country right now. So
Well, that's true too.
Since Kamala's defeat, she's been in California. I guess her campaign went bankrupt and is actually in the negative some, and she's trying to, I guess, raise some money there.
Well,
Last time I saw,
I could have started with that, but then we really wouldn't have had a discussion point when we said, I could have said, we don't really know who the hell's running the country right there. And then that would have been the end of the conversation. Which probably wouldn't have been as accurate as what I said. But if you combine who the hell's running the country and two, maybe they just don't have any idea, it starts to make a little bit more sense to the common folks.
last time I saw President Biden, he was overseas in the back of a photo of different nations' leaders, and then he wandered off kind of into the woods by himself. So I don't know if anybody's got him back. Yeah, it's crazy that the government tells us, "Oh, and don't worry, you're not in any kind of danger.
Yeah.
We've done our research." Well, show us the research. I mean, geez.
Because if it was over Alabama, there would have been some folks from Alabama who would have shot those things down with a shotgun.
They would have got on the back of their pickup trucks.
On the back of a pickup truck. Somebody would have shot that damn thing out of the air. One of them, anyway.
Well,
Guarantee it.
hopefully this doesn't continue on and embarrass us like the weeks that you talked about with the balloon that was able to get intelligence and flew over military. How do you think our military felt when that balloon's going over the military base, getting information from our military base? And are we still not the United States of America?
And I don't know how fast a blimp moves, but let's just say it's 50 miles an hour. And it took us a couple of weeks before they figured that out. These drones, based on, what little bit of knowledge I have about drones, seem like they move fairly quickly. So God help us if it took us 3 weeks to shoot the blimp down. Hell, we may never shoot these drones down.
You're exactly right. I have to get your comments on Belichick. He's the guy going to the University of North Carolina. And the University of North Carolina went from having the oldest coach in Mac Brown at 73 years old to having the oldest coach now, Bill Belichick, at 72. The only difference is Belichick's girlfriend is 24 years old. So I guess I guess if I'm him, I want her maybe to come to practice so I can keep an eye on her because she likes, she'd be around people her age. And I guess the negative thing is like if he likes them that young, and they say that they only got together on a plane about 3 years ago, and he started helping her with her homework and stuff, and then they started out as phone call friends. I don't want him helping out other girls, 20, 21-year-old girls with their homework. Can you make this make sense for me, either the relationship or the job?
None. Literally none. If you take them into two different things, the coaching thing, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, unless there is some truth to the aspect of he was somewhat blackballed by the NFL, and that the Patriots just basically threw him under the bus, which made him unhireable in the NFL, and he wants to coach. I'm not so sure that if that's the case, it seems like there could have been a lot better opportunities in North Carolina, but I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't see Bill Belichick working the living room. Now, I did hear some folks talking about it, about with the portal and with NIL, the days of them going and sitting in the living rooms trying to convince kids to come to XYZ school aren't really the same. You're dealing with agents and attorneys and accountants and tax people on getting these kids to come to your school. So maybe there isn't that aspect of it that he's not worried about it, because I just can't see Belichick sitting in some kid's living room in backwater North Carolina trying to convince him to come to his school. That just doesn't seem to fit. Now, I think we all had a perception of Belichick of when he was with the Bengals with the Patriots. And the first thing I thought was the press conference. And when a member of the press asked him a question that he thought was stupid, he just basically ignored them.
That's exactly right.
But you can do that when you've won, as many Super Bowls as he's had and had the success that he's done, and the owner is supportive of it. I'm just visualizing the first embarrassing loss at North Carolina, and somebody in the press there asking the question, does he do the same thing or is it completely different? Now, we did see a different Bill Belichick on the Pat McAfee show and some of these things that he's been doing with social media, that maybe this is the real Bill Belichick, that he can be, sociable and funny and stuff like that. But I just kept thinking about how many times do you think he can say, well, we're on to Clemson next week, like he used to do with the Patriots when he would say, well, we're on to play the Bengals next week. I don't know if that same mentality is going to work, because one, you don't have the success, and two, you don't have an owner that said, do whatever you need to do as long as you keep winning me Super Bowls. So from that perspective, and the fact that he's not going to break the coaching record, and it's North Carolina, and at the end of the day, no matter how good he coaches, North Carolina is never going to compete in the top 10 or 12 schools for a multitude of reasons. We can have a long conversation about NIL. And so I don't think he's going to be a big winner there. And how well does he handle, that? How well does he handle press people who aren't necessarily nationally known, like the folks that were interviewing him when he was a coach at the Patriots, and dealing with some of the silly questions that he's going to get? How does he deal with that? And then the recruiting and having some 19-year-old kid tell him that, I'm not playing unless you give me $1 million. It just seems like a recipe for this to end badly. On the other side of this equation, in this conversation about the 24-year-old, hey, good on you, Bill. I don't know how that works, but and apparently maybe recruiting is his thing. Maybe if he can recruit a 24-year-old young lady, he can recruit, the best of the 19-year-old football players. But
Well,
it is one of the most unique stories I can remember in recent time, that I don't think anybody, if you told them a month ago or 2 months ago that he would be dating a 24-year-old and he would be coaching the University of North Carolina Tar Heels football program, you could have got some serious bets on that one.
You're right.
Me included.
You're right, because, well, first of all, as I say in Fall and Recover, and I shared this with you when I saw you the other night, there's a line where they tell this 53-year-old that 31-year-old is really, really interested in him. And he's like, oh, well, that's just great. That's like the dog that like chases after the car. And then when he catches up to the car, he's like, well, wait a minute, I don't know how to drive this thing. So And then on the other, what you said is this. You're right, because if we understand that the Nick Sabans and the Mike Krzyzewskis and the Roy Williams and the Jimmy Boeheims and these legendary coaches have basically, I think transfer portal and NIL has played a role in all of them
No doubt.
getting out at the same time. Maybe some more so than other as far, but they've all gotten out at the same time. Here's a guy, and you're talking about odds and not seeing this coming. Here's a guy that's, won more Super Bowls than anyone, and now he's going to take on that challenge of having to deal with those. And I know that they'll have people in place to handle name,
Yeah.
image, and likeness and stuff, but it creates so many conflicts and problems in the locker room as well because people not getting playing time that they want, so they can't put up the numbers that they think they deserve. Our offensive lineman does the dirty work for the quarterback and the running back. There's a lot of headaches forthcoming, in my opinion.
I totally agree. Unless this is some play, and there's some stories around that, where obviously his son's going to come in and be the defensive coordinator, and this is an opportunity for get his son's head coaching career some sort of accelerant. That could be part of the other thing too. But and even on top of that, I mean, he is 72 years old. Obviously, he's got more money than he'll ever spend. Why go back into coaching in a situation that on its best day, North Carolina might crack the top 25?
Yeah, really, I get a little irritated, Fred, at this whole fathers who want to set up their sons stuff. Didn't exactly work for Ray Meyer and Joey Meyer at DePaul
Mm,
basketball, and I can name some other things. But here's the
sure.
deal: I have a lot of friends that are school teachers, and they tell me that one of the biggest problems right now in society is parents refusing to let their kids take the blame for anything or take responsibility for anything. So recently, when Joe Biden pardoned Hunter Biden, some people were saying, well, if it were my kid, I would do the same thing. And I said, well, what message does that send parents out there if they look at the nation's leader and he's pardoning his kid and not letting him be? And this Hunter's probably 50 something years old. What can we
At least.
expect them to do? Because I talk to teachers, and whenever there's a parent teacher kind of conference and all, it's never the kid's fault according to the parent. It's always somebody else's fault
No
or
doubt.
the teacher's fault. So when are we going to let people stand on their own feet and quit bailing them out, or quit in this case trying to set your kids up? Let the kids. Yeah, I think you understand the argument I'm coming from. And when you look at the nation, our nation's leader, when it's happening there, and he's not even a juvenile, then we got some serious problems.
No doubt. No doubt. No doubt. Like I said, I don't see too many ways that this ends long term successfully. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to watch next year when that season starts and the press conferences start. And they just got beat by, not by North Carolina State, and he can't just say, "Well, we're on to next week when we play Clemson." It'll be interesting to see. He had a little bit of a, he had air cover with his owner and his success in the NFL. He does not have that here.
Let's talk a little football. I'll begin by giving out my plays, and there's not many. I am 1-6 in my last seven picks, so I am 35-36 on the season, 7-8 with 5 stars, and then throw all that aside. I'm 13-5 with the soccer plays. I'll give a couple of weekend soccer plays out. I like Manchester United; they're favored by a half a goal, and I'll take the Wolverhampton Wanderers even. I'll go with the Wolves and see if I can continue doing well with soccer. With football, I've got one play of the 4 games that Fred and I are going to discuss. I've got the Indiana Hoosiers plus 7.5 against Notre Dame. That's the only Friday night
Mm,
football game. And then in the pros, I'm going to release one pick. I'm going to go, we still refer to them as the Washington Redskins here on Talking with Tony. I'm going to go with the Washington Redskins plus 3.5 against the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to talk with Fred in a little bit about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But first, I want to talk about these 4 college football playoff games with you, Fred. There is that one game Friday night. I'm not saying Indiana will defeat Notre Dame, but I think the game is going to be competitive. And that's why I like Indiana plus the 7.5. Notre Dame's at home, kind of cool if you're going to have a team playing at home in the college football playoff to have two in-state guys facing each other.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously Indiana's a great story. It's been interesting to watch them play. I think they've played better than obviously anybody thought they were going to play. Um, I would take Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame wins this game at home. This is rare air for Indiana, not so much for Notre Dame. Um, it's been a long grinding season for Indiana. I would probably take Notre Dame over Indiana.
ESPN's going to want it to be Notre Dame and Notre Dame
No
and
doubt. Yeah.
Georgia
No
in
doubt.
that
Yeah.
Sugar Bowl. You're talking about the last game on New Year's night, rematch
Yeah.
of 1980. Every uneducated UGA football fan talks about the 1980 UGA football team might be the greatest team that's ever lived. Well, they faced the number 7 Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. Notre Dame had no chance to win the
Right.
national championship. They didn't have the motivation that Georgia had. And when the season was over, Georgia didn't own a single victory over anyone that remained in the top 20. And that's why 6 or 7 Eastern AP voters voted a one-loss Pittsburgh team to,
Mhm.
as the national champion against Georgia. And in that game, Notre Dame made so many mistakes. They had like 3 interceptions. They missed 3 field goals. They fumbled at their own 20. They fumbled a kickoff that actually they didn't fumble it, Fred. When Georgia took a 10-3 lead, I believe it was 10-3, it may have been to 3-3, but I think it's 10-3. Georgia kicked off Notre Dame. The 2 Notre Dame deep men never found the ball. It was between one of them's legs on the turf, and they lost it first in the lights and then never found it. And Georgia went down and covered it at the 2, and then Walker scored like 2 plays later. I mean, Notre
Yeah.
Dame really dominated the game. Georgia threw one complete pass, I believe. But that being said, I think, and you would agree with me, ESPN is pulling for Notre Dame, and they
Oh,
would
no
love
doubt.
to have a Notre Dame Georgia ratings bonanza.
No, no. Oh, that it would be huge. It would be huge.
SMU and Penn State will be the first game up on this weekend on Saturday of the 3. Penn State's favored by 8.5. Now, look, Penn State was very effective in the Big Ten championship game against Oregon offensively. And Tyler Warren is a special kind of athlete, catching balls out of the backfield, carrying balls. But how they weren't able to slow down Oregon. SMU's got a lot of weapons in their own right. They're kind of like a buzz team. They got in. They took the Bama's spot, is what Bama people are saying. This to me screams a competitive game. At least SMU at Penn State with Penn State favored by 8.5. How do you see it?
Yeah, this one, I would touch this one because what you just said is absolutely right. I was a little surprised that Penn State moved the ball as effectively as they did against Oregon. Now, Oregon is an offensive juggernauts. I get it. SMU can move the ball too. If you forced me to pick somebody, I would probably pick Penn State, but I wouldn't if you said, "Hey, let's go to the sports book and put some money down on it." I would put any money on this one. This one would scare me. I think either one of these teams can win, but I was surprised that Penn State was as effective offensively as they were. And a little bit of the same thing. This is rare air for SMU. Penn State's at home. Penn State moved the ball very effectively against Oregon, so they should be able to do it against SMU. I think Penn State wins this game, but I wouldn't put any of my own money on it.
And with SMU, we know has got the great coach with Rhett Lashley. We saw, we
Yeah,
thought he
yeah.
was a fine coach here at Auburn. Really, Fred, you can say that SMU was going to be a team that's not going anywhere in the future, right?
No, they are, as we have spoken about before, they are an up and coming star with the resources that they've got in Dallas, the talent in Texas that they're going to be able to compete for. This will not be SMU's last visit to the top 12 in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. The middle game on Saturday has Texas at home. The biggest favorite of the spreads, they're favored by 12 against Clemson. Clemson knew they had to win the ACC championship game, and they were able to pull that one off. It was played at a high level against SMU. But going on the road in Austin, to me, seems like just an overwhelming task for Clemson.
I agree. I mean, Texas, if they played this game 100 times, would probably win it 98 times. Clemson seems to be pulling some rabbits out of a hat this year, and you could say he backed into the playoffs or what, but he seems to be defying all odds and getting this team to continue to be involved in the tournament. He's taken a lot of grief in the press around not using the portal and not using NIL and stuff like that. So he may actually be doing one of his best coaching jobs in a long time, which is saying something considering the success that he's had over the years there. But you're right. Going to Austin, playing Texas at home. But the quarterback question pops, it rears its ugly head with Texas. And, Evers doesn't play well and throws a couple of picks and stuff like that, but Texas should win this game.
I think their defense is so good. I mean, I
Yeah,
think you could argue one of the top two in the country, right? Which, Georgia's got tremendous defense, although teams have had success against that. Look at Georgia Tech and what they did primarily on the ground. But I would take Texas here. Once again, the only pick that I put forth was Indiana plus the points, plus the seven
yeah,
and a half. But Texas's defense is just so physical,
it
and
is.
they've had time to recover since the loss in the SEC championship game. If this was like a week later, I might feel a little bit differently
Sure.
there. But and Clemson's been inconsistent. The game that I'm most interested in, I know you don't have any love for my Buckeyes. I hear it from you all the time. But Ohio State's favored by 7 at home against Tennessee. This I know is not really what happened, but Ohio State scored an unnecessary touchdown in the final seconds against Indiana. They shouldn't have done it. They should have took 3 knees, and they didn't do it. And I thought it was a little bit of karma when they lost the next week to Michigan. And I don't go on websites. I just am not that person who, but I do belong to a couple of Facebook pages with Ohio State fan clubs. And I kind of put that up there and I got like cursed at and stuff after that. Because everybody was like happy the
Yeah,
week
yeah.
before that they ran up the score. Those are people that never played the game of football. They don't understand
No.
what that's like to have a score ran up on you and all. And then, Michigan came back and won. I do like Ohio State in this spot. Many of my friends think just because they're playing an SEC team, they're going to lose to an SEC team. Ohio State's had trouble with SEC teams through the years. I think this is a little bit different of an animal. Ohio State is very weak on the offensive line with their two best players, including the Remington Award winner, out for the season. But they have more time now to prepare for this Tennessee front than they did. And if I'm going to be honest with you, Michigan still has a strength and an advantage over Ohio
Yes.
State. It's the pass rush, and
Yes.
that was a problem with the good Gant and Graham. So I think the Buckeyes advance here. How do you see this?
Well, this is another one that God, I mean, this is why we can't. They expanded to 12 teams, so you have these kind of matchups and stuff like this. I'm not crazy about either one of these teams. There's a couple things that pop into my head as it relates to these two teams. One is, Ryan Day does seem to get when he needs to win, seems a way to not win and doesn't get the teams prepared, stuff like that. Tennessee, I'll be honest with you, they've got a good coach too. Has it been smoke and mirrors? Did they really play as tough a schedule? Ohio State should win this game at home. But something in the back of my mind is that why is it that Ryan Day, now I know his schedule, his record outside of Michigan is phenomenal, but it just seems like when they get to that spot where it can become transcending for the program, they find a way to lose as opposed to finding a way to win. And so I think Ohio State will win this game, but I won't be surprised if Ryan Day does Ryan Day things and they lose.
Okay, now I want you to of the 4 games, and really just ask you to pick the winners. I'm going to ask you to pick the one you feel most comfortable with about the point spread. Notre Dame is favored by 7.5 over Indiana. Penn State 8.5 over SMU. Texas 12 over Clemson, and Ohio State 7 over Tennessee. I get the idea. It's not the SMU Penn State game because you seem pretty torn
Yeah.
about that. Is there one that sticks out of the 4 to you with the point spread?
Hmm. I would probably say Notre Dame covers the 7.
Okay, okay, that's fair
And
enough.
I think Texas is going to win pretty handily, but 12 points is just a lot of points.
I mean,
But I also think that they should cover that too. But I think if I was going to pick one who's going to cover it more likely, it's probably Notre Dame.
fair point on Texas. I mean, they could be ahead 31-13 late in that game, and Clemson get what looks like a meaningless
Right.
touchdown, and it actually,
Yeah.
backdoor covers it. Let me run down Danny and John's picks. John is 83 and 82, 6-9 with 5 stars. His 5 stars, Notre Dame minus 7.5. He has Penn State minus 8.5, Texas minus 12. Ohio State minus 7. In the NFL, he goes with the Ravens minus 6.5, the Eagles minus 3.5 against that Washington pick of mine. He likes the Falcons minus 10 against the Giants, the 49ers plus 2 against the Dolphins, and he likes the Tampa Bay Buccaneers minus 4. run down Danny's picks. Danny's 82 and 83. He's 5 and 10 with his 5 stars. He's got Notre Dame plus seven, Notre Dame minus 7.5, SMU plus 8.5. His 5 stars, Texas minus 12. He likes Tennessee plus 7. In the NFL, all of the panel went with the Ravens minus 6.5 at home against the Steelers. They all went with the Eagles minus 3.5 at Washington. Remember, I went opposite with Washington. He likes the Giants plus 10 against the Falcons, the 49ers plus 2 at Miami. And he was the only person of the panel to go with the Cowboys plus 4 against the Buccaneers. We'll run down Stormy and Kevin's picks here shortly. Let's get back to Fred now and get some thoughts of him on the NFL. And let's begin with the Steelers and the Ravens. And you don't have to worry about point spread here. You can give us a key. The Ravens are favored by 6.5. We know about the Steelers are having a great year. The defense is phenomenal. They did just lose to a tough game at Philadelphia. It's not no, there's nothing wrong with going in there, and there won't
No.
be anything wrong with losing at Baltimore either with the weapons offensively they have. The entire panel though took Ravens minus 6.5, and that was shocking to me, meaning that they would need to win by a touchdown. So if it's a tight game, the panel all has that wrong. This is one of those rivalries, Fred, that are often good defensive battles.
Mm. Yeah, this kind of feels a little bit they find that this Lamar finds a way to lose the game. Baltimore should win this game. I think if they played it a dozen times, they would win 10 of them. But they do seem to find a way to lose games that they should probably win, especially this time of year, especially in the playoffs. They just have not gotten it done the way they should with the load of wealth of talent that they have on that team. They should win that game, but they do seem to find a way to lose games that they shouldn't lose this time of year as well. But
Yeah, you're right
I would
about
say
that.
Baltimore giving the points.
They are sometimes the top seed in the playoffs and lose their very first, home game
Right.
when they've got home field throughout the playoffs. The entire panel has the Eagles on the road minus 3.5 at Washington. I think this Washington team is not a bad football team,
Mhm.
and I think they're strong defensively. And it's still in the NFL, it's like college when you're playing one of these big games. It's not easy, Fred, to win on the road. I was so impressed with what Tampa did against the
Yeah.
Chargers this past Sunday. We'll talk about that shortly. But I believe Washington can play a real competitive game against Philadelphia and maybe potentially win it.
I do too. I think Washington is a up and coming, strong team for the next several years if they continue to develop their young kids, and obviously their quarterback could become an MVP quarterback in the coming years. It just feels like that Philadelphia has finally gotten their act together, where they've had a ton of talent. They do seem to have finally put it all together. I think what they've won now, 10 in a row, 11 in a row,
They're the hottest team in the league.
hottest team in the league. It is hard to go on the road. It is hard to go on the road and win. I would probably go Philadelphia here just because they do finally seem to have it all clicking in the right direction.
But you could also see them winning by 3, 2, 1, like it being a good game.
Yeah. I'm not saying they're going to go in there and run them out of the stadium. I just think they're going to win the game.
A game that will have your interest, have your dad's interest. He's in that Atlanta area. The Falcons are favored by 10 against the Giants, and the Buccaneers have overtook the Falcons and if its season ended right now, despite the fact that the Falcons have swept the Buccaneers, if the season ended right now, the Buccaneers would be the NFC South champions. Falcons are in a situation where they've got to win. They're favored by 10 over the Giants. This is probably their most winnable game of remaining in the schedule. I mean, this is just one that they absolutely have to win. They had to win Monday night against the Raiders. They pulled that out. Cousins is still not sharp. They
No.
pulled that out. They've got to pull this one out. The panel is split. Two of them take the Falcons as far as the points go, but I think they all believe that the Falcons will win the game, and I would think you probably do, and playing in Atlanta as well.
I mean, as bad as the Falcons have played in that, and I watched the game last night because obviously I was hoping that the Raiders would give them some tough time because that would pretty much close out the season for them, and the Bucs probably would have been a shoe in. But I will say that at the end of the day, we could get 22 guys in your listening area and beat the Giants. I don't care how bad Cousins play. The Giants are horrible. They've got nothing. They got nothing to play for. They're on the road. The Falcons win this game without any problems. So even as bad as ineffective as Cousins has been, they win this game.
Got 4 minutes left. Occasionally, I throw Jake Barton a curveball, and I will here. I'm going to have him look for some footage for the 49ers and the Dolphins played each other in the Super Bowl in early 1985. I guess back then the Super Bowl was in January. It was for the season of '84. It was Dan Marino versus Joe Montana. I believe it was Marino's rookie year, and the 49ers won. And my memory is telling me 38-16. It seems like it was out in Palo Alto, California. But I believe that that's right. They're going to have a rematch. Maybe Jake find a little bit of that footage real quick right as we're talking. The Dolphins are favored by 2 over the 49ers. Don't even know why I threw this game in, but do you have a feel for this game?
The 49ers, with their wealth of talent too, are snake bit. They got so many injuries. The Dolphins, I think, still feel like they've got some outside chance. I would take the Dolphins here just because the 49ers are just so beat up.
Fair enough. I got about 2.5 minutes to go. The game that you'll be most interested in is the primetime game. It's in Dallas. Tampa Bay is favored by 4. They could not have played better, in my opinion, than they just played on the road. And Dallas is kind of a wounded team. They did win this past week, but it seems to be that they're clicking, like we talked about the Eagles clicking. It seems like the
Yes,
Bucks are clicking.
it is. They do seem to be putting together that game last weekend against the Chargers. I'll be honest with you. I thought they were in for some trouble with the Chargers, with maybe the quarterback. The secondary for the Bucks is absolutely decimated with injuries. They've got nobody back there basically. And I thought, boy, if they get into a track meet, there's no way they can keep up with the Chargers. Actually, they did a really good job of defending the pass. And then Baker, though, every once in a while, you just go, you get a cringe moment when he throws a pass, but they're clicking. They really haven't missed the Godwin wide receiver injury like we thought they would. Some of these other kids have stepped up. McFadden has stepped up. And so they're actually a pretty good team. But I will tell you at the end of the day, the Bucks are going to probably be a 10-8 team. They're going to get a pass into the playoffs, but they're not a team that's going to go very deep. They're getting what they can out of the talent that they have on that team, which is pretty good. And they're a 10-8 team and probably a first round, loss in the playoffs.
But they would get to host that if they win that division.
That's right. They'll get to host the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and anything can happen when you host a game at home. But at the end of the day, they're getting everything they can out of those guys.
let me get to Stormy's picks real quick. He's 81 and 84, 6-9 with 5 stars. He's got Notre Dame -7.5, Penn State -8.5. His 5 stars, Clemson +12. He's got Ohio State -7. The Ravens -6.5. The Eagles -3.5. The Falcons -10. The Dolphins -2 and the Buccaneers -4. Kevin, 77 and 88, 6-9 with his 5 star. And his 5 star this game is Notre Dame -7.5. He's got Penn State -8.5. He takes the underdogs in the other 2 games. That's Clemson and Tennessee. And the pros, the Ravens -6.5, the Eagles -3.5, the Giants +10, the Dolphins -2, and the Buccaneers -4. Got less than 60 seconds. Fred, it's always a pleasure for you to come and do the show. I've missed you, but looking forward to having you on more times. And
Yep.
you have a lot to be excited about come Auburn basketball.
Yeah, boy, no kidding. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Fred. For Fred Blatchford in Tampa, Florida, and Jake Barton in Newnan, Georgia, I'm AJ. You'll see me next time in Auburn, Alabama. We'll see you next time.